Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bonjour Tennis Fantasies podcast. Today, with me, my business partner on these international trips, Steve Contardi. Steve, how are you doing today?
Fine. We're here in Cincinnati. We're getting 5 inches of snow, but everything is fine because we have indoor tennis courts.
All right. And Steve, we let you introduce our special guest today.
Our special guest is more than a special guest. He's a special friend. We've known him for a long time. Mark Woodforde, member of the International Tennis Hall of Fame, of course, top 20 singles player, and of course the number one doubles player in the world. Back when he was out showing everybody how to do it on the pro circuit. Mark is very involved with the ITF now, and we'll get into some of that as we go. But Mark, welcome. We're delighted that you're with us.
Steve, it's always good to see you. And Guy, bonjour to you.
Bonjour, bonjour,
Thank
Mark.
you for having me, guys.
Okay, Mark, you just finished up with the Davis Cup. First of all, tell us a little bit about your involvement, and then tell us about the Davis Cup that just finished in Italy, which I understand was just fabulous.
Yeah, it was. It was Italy victorious for the third time in a row. They took out Spain in the final. The Davis Cup finals was played in Bologna, Italy. So Italy, as I said, winning 3 times in a row now. So the 2 previous years, they had actually won when the finals were played in Malaga. So the excitement, the euphoria of them winning back-to-back titles in Spain, and that really promoted to the Italian Federation that they then put in a bid, which was successful, to be hosts of the Davis Cup final. So the Italian Federation is, really outstanding at the moment. I mean, they're so successful with the team events. They're also champions in the Billie Jean King Cup. They're 3-time champions with Davis Cup. And of course, they're very successful in running the Italian Open at Foro Italico, which you guys would be well familiar with the journey that you took early this year. So, but brilliant week. And that part of my role with the ITF, I'm a member of the board of directors, and part of my scope is also the Davis Cup chairman. So I oversee working with the executives and the Davis Cup committee on preparing the competition year in, year out. And so that for me, is pretty much a lot of focus during the year. Absolutely love it. Look at next year. It'll be a huge year once again, whether Italy can become the first ever nation to win 4 times in a row, or will there be another team that perhaps wasn't in the final 8 in Bologna that may come into the competition and see if they can knock off the title holders?
Well, Mark, you played Davis Cup, and of course you won the Davis Cup for Australia. For the average tennis fan, they're probably not familiar with Davis Cup, but there certainly is a difference when you're playing for your country. Tell us a little bit about that. That's got to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, for me, that was when I was invited by the incoming president of the ITF, David Haggerty, who was or had been the president of the USTA. So, Steve, you would have, I think, known some of his background. He'd also been the Prince rep for a number of years.
Long time. That's how I know Dave way back then.
Yeah. So he was well aware, as one of the Grand Slam presidents and CEOs, that I think when countries and obviously Australia being a Grand Slam nation, and we have such a strong connection with Davis Cup. So I was part of the team for Australia for a number of years, and I had the joy of playing singles and doubles for my country. And I think as a young kid, tennis and still is, it's one of the staple sports in Australia. We are a huge sporting nation, and tennis was one of those that we have legends, we have heroes. And for me, there were iconic players that as a youngster, I might not necessarily have seen them play too many tournaments, but I certainly remember reading plenty about them. And when I had the opportunity to watch them on TV, it was some of these iconic Australian tennis players playing Davis Cup. So, it's that education process really does start very early in Australia. And we love our sports that are team-oriented. Tennis, as you guys both know, it's an individual sport for a good part of the year. But I think that's also an attractive allure is Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup, but it's a team sport. So it was an opportunity to be around some of my tennis mates, my colleagues that I had grown up with, and to spend some quality time with them. But gosh, that was a big goal for me when I decided that when I approached my parents and said that I wanted to attempt to become a professional tennis player, and would they be able to help provide an opportunity for me to travel away. But really, a part of that was that I wanted to play for Australia. I wanted to wear my country's colours, and I wanted to be out there and playing for what I think is arguably the grandest trophy in all sports. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, live, the enormity of the Davis Cup trophy. It is huge, and I know there's the presentation where the cup, the top tier of this magnificent trophy is presented to the team, but there are levels to the Davis Cup trophy itself, and but it's really been had a significant impact in my career, and that's why I accepted the role of the invitation that came my way in retirement, that to become close with the ITF and work on modernising the competition.
All right, and the modernization, you changed the format, and how is that working out?
Yeah, look, it was a controversial move. I think sometimes change is very difficult for individuals and for sporting competitions. The Davis Cup competition has been around for well over 100 years, and it had the same format. And tennis, as we know, it has evolved. The very first competition, there are only just a small amount of nations that participated in the competition itself. And that was pretty much the Grand Slams. And the format back then, if you won the competition, you didn't have to play. You didn't have to get involved in the competition the following year. You just went into what they called the challenge round. And
you waited and they came to you, right?
Yeah, that's right. They played it out. And so it really did, I think, balance towards more of the advanced nations. And they tended to be the Grand Slam nations, who, of course, are the wealthiest nations because of their status, being the four pillars of international tennis. So, but the competition really had not changed a whole lot over a long period of time. And we were just seeing, the ITF were discovering, even through my playing days, it was an attractive aspect, certainly for Australians. You mark that off in your calendar. But it was just becoming very difficult. The riches of the ATP Tour were starting to grow tenfold, and that made it difficult for players to commit to playing Davis Cup for their country, because it actually meant that you had to miss 2 or 3 weeks of playing on the tour in order to play Davis Cup, because you had to arrive early, you had to practice, you had to train, and then you had the actual Davis Cup week, and you were so tired, physically and mentally drained from playing, that you generally had to take the following week off as well. So, when the tour is starting to add tournaments, and I'm talking about the ATP Tour, onto the calendar, and yet if you were a part of a successful Davis Cup team, you were having to take and play 4 times a year. you were probably having to take anywhere to 10 to 12 weeks off the ATP tour, which, as I said, prize money was increasing tremendously. You're playing for world ranking points. When you play Davis Cup, you're playing for the honor of representing your country. So we really had to make some changes. Top players were asking, they were begging for changes. And of course, the federations, the ITF is about the nations. We are, I think it is 156 nations that belong to the ITF. And that shows the depth of Davis Cup. It's not just the elite 8 that play for the competition. It's also in the lower groups that have to play throughout the year. And so, yes, there was a move probably about 10 years ago to modernize the competition, to try and take on board the feedback from the players as well as the nations. And it was just in a desire to modernize the competition to keep it relevant. Has it been an absolute hit with everyone? I would say no, but I think that shows the difficulty of making changes to a competition that had been playing the same format for over 100 years. But it takes time. You need to be able to put the competition out there and for the players to adapt as well as the nations. And I think we're heading in the right direction. But of course, the tour, the Grand Slams are becoming, a lot more successful. The ATP Tour is becoming a huge part of anyone of a tennis player's career now. So Davis Cup, where the ITF is still trying to make sure that it is the one team competition that is a part of a player's career.
Well, certainly, growing up playing team sports and coaching, of course, high school tennis and whatnot, and Guy played college tennis. Team tennis takes on a whole different aspect without question, and I absolutely love it. And I'm hoping that the Davis Cup, gets some traction and gets back to the highlight that it once was.
Yeah.
So we'll be pulling for that. Now, talking about the tour has made some major changes as well.
Yes.
I guess all of the 1000s have now gone to 2 weeks, and I hear grumblings that it's physically pretty demanding on the players, and that we're going to see a lot of injuries, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
From your perspective, what do you see along that line?
Well, there you go, Steve and Guy. The tour have changed. It is in an effort to try and advance the tour, and those Master 1000 series were played over 1 week. A couple of years ago, there was the move towards expanding them, as you say, to 10-day or 2-week events, and it's been really difficult for the players to actually adapt to that schedule. Yes, I as well hear rumblings from players that they find it very difficult to switch over to these 2-week events. Obviously, on the ATP Tour, there's also the second tier of events that are 500 series, and then there's the third tier of 250 series events, and they retain that 1 week format. So I think it is. It's in an effort to try and promote the game and modernize it. We'll see. In years to come, I think again with these changes, it just needs time. But at the moment, there are some players that are unhappy with that. Of course, you have players that when they lose early in those 1000 series tournaments, I think their main gripe is that they're unable to go off and play another tournament in the second week of those 1000 series tournaments. The way the tour is set up, that there's no other tournaments that are to be played on the same continent when a 1000 series event is being played. So some players that are losing...
Kind of a double-sided sword then. You got the players that lose early, They don't get to play. You get the players that go deep into the tournament. They get worn out because they got another tournament coming up and another tournament. So
Yeah,
it's on both sides. It seems to be
that's right.
problematic.
That's right. And I think also you throw in that traditionally, historically, we've had the 4 Grand Slams, and those events run over 2 weeks or a fortnight, that we say in Australia.
Yeah.
But so I think there are players that are questioning. So is the tour trying to emulate what the Grand Slams provide? I mean, 4 times a year, the big focus is trying to peak your level for those Grand Slams. But it's just interesting the way our sport, unfortunately, it has these territorial groups. The ATP look after 1000s, 500s, 250s, and challenges. You have the 4 Grand Slams, and they generally operate together, but then they also perform individually. You have the ITF, who look after tennis in the Olympics and the flagship team events, BJK Cup and Davis Cup, as well as the World Tennis Tour, which is the beginning of one's journey as a tennis player. You have to play these low-level, or I don't want to say low-level, but they're just the early stages of your career where really you're trying to just get out there and have volume of matches. So it is interesting when the early stages of one's career, it is about playing as many matches as possible. You need the reps, right, to try and build your confidence. You have to learn about your game, your strengths and weaknesses. And yet we arrive, if you get into the top 100, there is a tendency that you maybe should be playing less, that, physically you have to be aware of maintaining this level and still trying to peak. So, it is just a really weird setup that we have.
Mark, you're talking, and we're talking that the Masters are now 10 days or 2 weeks long. Players, they're getting injured. They don't have much time to recover physically and also mentally. But a lot has been said, and it seems like that we are adding more tournaments, and there is no time to recover. And recently, we are talking about a new master in Saudi Arabia in 2027, 2008.
Yep.
And my question to you here is, where are they going to put this tournament in the schedule?
Yeah, that's been a bit of a controversial decision to welcome in another Masters 1000s, and as you say, the difficulty of playing in Saudi. What you have to have an event that makes calendar sense. You just can't pick a particular time of the year and thrust it in there, because it may impact the rest of the calendar and other tournaments. So has been a lot of discussion whether it starts the year off, so the first week of January, that potentially it could be positioned there. But then the Australians are worried about it impacting their traditional January month, where everyone is really down in Australia, trying to prepare for the Australian Open. So the ATP are having to take on board feedback from Tennis Australia. There are a couple of tournaments that, as you guys well know, in Dubai, they have a 1000 series. There is an event in Doha. So and those events happen probably a month after the Australian Open. So I from what I'm understanding, that it seems like the new Saudi event will probably go into that swing, so that they can have like a Middle East swing, basically. But then again, the issue that it's hard to say, Guy, whether there is any right time to place in the calendar, because those events, and don't forget, the 1000 series are mandatory events for the elite players. And there is a South American swing that plays on clay courts. It provides an opportunity for plenty of South Americans, or for those who love playing on clay, that perhaps don't want to be playing on hard courts. After being in Australia for the month of January, it's trying to balance and provide opportunities for across the board for all different types of players and the way that they play, their style of playing. So there are all these intricate issues that they have to try and work through. But I believe at the moment, probably the needle is leaning towards maybe sometime in February for this new event.
Okay, and last question on these Masters. You said that the Masters are mandatory.
Yep.
I think there is 8 Masters, right?
I think there are 9, and the Saudi event makes 10.
So, and they have to play 8 out 9, right?
I think it depends on your. I think there's a combination of age and your previous commitments with the tour. So. I think for someone that's probably fresh onto the tour, maybe fresh into the top 100, I think they're all mandatory. And for someone, an elite player like maybe a Djokovic, I think there is some type of a reduction in his commitment. He doesn't have to play all of them.
Yeah.
So last comment. It will affect. If it comes in February, it will muchly affect the South American swing, which is Buenos Aires 250 and Rio de Janeiro 500, because the top players will have to go to Saudi Arabia, and the 250 in this case there will be in danger, kind of not bringing a big star to this event.
That's the balance that the leaders of the power brokers of the ATP Tour, and it's led by Andrea Gadenzi, a former player. So he kind of understands, bringing that player aspect into a lot of the decision making. But it just isn't easy. And in particular, it's not through, I don't think any, bad managing of the tour. This is because the tour is becoming so successful. There are tournaments that are wanting to upgrade from a 250 to a 500. There are 500s that would dearly love to become a part of that elite 1000 series tournaments. But there's only so many weeks of the year. And of course, players need time off. You need to be able to rejuvenate your body. You need to be able to come down, have time off before you start to train up for the start of the year. So it is a bit of a dilemma, but the players, at least they can control their own destiny. You can elect, depending on where you're ranked, how many tournaments that you play, how many matches, and it's quite incredible because, for someone like myself and for Todd, when we sat down to map out our schedule for the year, our goal was to play 100 matches each season. And I don't think that there are many players that are in close to playing 100 matches at all these days. And yet they're saying how fatigued they are. And don't forget, Todd and I and a number of other players from my era, we played singles and doubles. And there are so many guys out there that are either playing just singles or they're playing just doubles. But I don't think some of the marquee players are even hitting 70 matches during the year. And I just find it really odd that there are so many complaints about how heavy their schedule is.
Yeah, just like, you talk about baseball. Okay, I just read something the other day, and just as a measuring stick, okay, right now, if a pitcher in baseball is up around 90 to 100 pitches, they take them out. Yeah. I just read something, Nolan Ryan to 235 pitches in a complete game. So different errors, different, and it's just totally different. The training and the expectations, whether they're lower or just more fine tuned, I guess that really is an issue. So now you mentioned you played singles and you played doubles. Back in your era, there were a number of top players that continued to play singles as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Singles and doubles, I should say.
Yeah, singles and doubles. I mean, that was Gosh, growing up in Australia, every tournament that you played in, it was you entered singles and doubles. Every competition that you participated in for a club, you played singles and doubles. There just was never a choice. You it's almost like you were compelled to play both. So, for me to become a tennis player, that was about to be as polished as possible in both disciplines.
So, which segues me right into the next question. Okay, so you and Todd played singles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you were number one in doubles. You held the record for most doubles titles of 66? Was that? Is that correct?
It was 60 plus titles that we won together. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then of course in this era, along come the Bryan brothers, our good friends, and they only played doubles. And I think they ended up winning 102 titles or something like that.
They did, yeah, they did.
I mean that's amazing. So,
gosh. You may say they're your friends. They're not my friends for going ahead and breaking our records. Damn them.
So compare if you would, and this is a kind of an unfair question, but the doubles today compared to the doubles when you played. Is it the same game, different game? Is it obviously the singles game is completely changed? Is the doubles game changed as well?
Yeah. Look, I believe it has, and as you pointed out there, singles. We go through cycles of leaders in the game that maybe have influenced the way the next generation comes about. Obviously, the surfaces can also they can dictate the way that a player sets up their game. In probably the 60s and 70s and maybe even the early part of the 80s, a lot of the surfaces were super quick. And so that really provided that platform into players having to not let the ball bounce. They wanted to take it in the air, and so serve and volley became really the dominant way of playing. Through my time growing up, being Australian, I loved serve and volleying. I loved playing singles and doubles. But for me, my coach, his philosophy at the time was if I was wanting to become a top flight player, I might have had the attacking part of the game at hand, but I needed to learn how to defend. I needed to learn how to play on the slower surfaces. And then through my time, the evolution of courts moving away from fast surfaces to the slower surfaces. And we saw the Borg type of game. We saw the Rolander type of game, which might have led into Nadal. But then you have that mix of a Sampras style, where very, very, pretty much a big serve. He did get to net. It just kind of changes, and it has changed in doubles as well. From the time that doubles used to be, you served and volleyed on your first and second serve, and I think the outlook for and I'll stick with. Probably with Todd and I, our view that if an opponent served and stayed back, I mean, that was like celebrations for us, because we were like, we're getting towards the net. That was where our strength was.
They're giving us the net.
Yeah. And we used finesse. We had different types of ways of playing. I mean, yes, our strength was getting to the net there, but we could stay on the baseline, and the variety of shots, because we played singles, enabled us, to be very successful on the doubles court. But I think today you see a lot of doubles teams. They're not necessarily serve and volleying every first serve, and it's not always the case that they will they often stay back behind their second serve as well. But it's a bit more power oriented. They position themselves so close to the net. It's almost like their teeth. They get down so low, and their teeth is rubbing along the top of the net. They're that close whilst their partner is serving. And I mean, I even have a bit of a laugh, fellas, when I think back to one of our great Davis Cup captain in Neil Fraser, and when Todd and I we got to play under Neil Fraser for probably a year or two, but one of his basic philosophies that he would remind us was first serve and first volley. And that kind of, he would elaborate and say, just try and, you don't have to hit a big first serve. Just put it close to a corner of the service box and get in very quick and make sure you play your first volley. Get the first volley over and then see what happens from there. I mean, today, and that meant getting the first serve in. It meant slowing down our first serve. We would probably be hitting our first serve at maybe 60 to 75% pace. Today, the guys, they hammer down their serve at 100%. They don't necessarily get to net, and the first ball that's there, they just launch into it. So it is a really first strike way that they play doubles. Mike and Bob Bryan, obviously, they played a bit more of the style that was akin to the way that Todd and I played and the other great doubles teams in decades before. That the doubles today is just I just wonder whether the level is the same, that the variety of shots is not there. They just come in and they really power through these
Power
matches.
Game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Going back to the men's tour, okay. Alcaraz and Sinner seem to be the dominant factors. Who besides these guys can win a Grand Slam, in your opinion?
Yeah. We have, I do commentary besides, working with the ITF during the year. I commentate and I try to focus on the 4 Grand Slams. Just recently at this year's US Open that was played in September, this was a question that we actually discussed, a group of commentators, was, there's a lot of talk about this current generation of Alcaraz and Sinner. And it has come so quickly after the domination of Federer, Nadal and Djokovic. And probably the tour is, I think there's a lot of relief that they do have the excitement of Alcaraz and Sinner. But of course, there's all this chat about, well, is who else? Is it going to be anyone else coming up that possibly can contend for a Grand Slam? So this was the very question that we actually had a lot of fun with. It was posed to us by the host, was who outside of Alcaraz and Sinner do you think will be the next person to win a Grand Slam, and when? And actually, it is quite, it really does push a lot of buttons because, we are saying, and I agree, I think Alcaraz and Sinner has really separated themselves from the rest of the playing group, the rest of the top 10 and top 20. So I know the way I responded at the time was, and maybe it might have been because of my environment. I was there at the US Open. It was midway through the event. And look, there's a lot of support for the American guys, as there should be when you're playing at your home Grand Slam. For me, I threw in Ben Shelton as a possible Grand Slam winner at the US Open. And then, of course, they hit me with, so is that going to happen in 2026? Or are you saying 2027? So, if it's 2027, that means I'm leaning towards that Alcaraz and Sinner are going to win every Grand Slam between now and September of 2027. So I quickly changed my line of thought, and I said, look, I think if Ben, and the reason I went with Shelton is because he's got such an explosive game. That serve is just a piece of poetry for me. The fact that he's left-handed, he has a game that he tries to keep points short, and I think with the home support playing in New York there, that those are ingredients that could help him to win a Grand Slam and at the US Open of 2026. But it's an interesting prospect to you question. I don't know if you guys have any input on who you think are going to win a Grand Slam outside of Alcaraz and Sinner.
I really don't. I don't know. Guy, how about you?
I think I would say João Fonseca. I think he's the next big talent after Alcaraz Sinner.
Right.
If you compare a little bit what he did this year to the same age with Alcaraz when he was 19, I think João Fonseca was 19 this year or 20.
Yep.
And he won his first 250 in Buenos Aires on wet clay. And then he won in October in indoors in Basel, his first ATP 500. So he's on the right
trajectory.
Following the same Alcaraz, and he won the next gen last December, 2024. So I think the next step is if you look at what Alcaraz did in his 19 years old, the next year after winning his first tournament in the next gen, he won, I think, his first Grand Slam, if I'm correct. So I will put it's going to be. I'm going to say João Fonseca is going to win the French Open in 2026.
In 2026? Okay.
Yes.
I
don't see either, as you said. I don't know. I don't see anyone in between. I mean, 2027 looks so far away from me. I don't think, again, Alcaraz and Sinner are going to win two. They just won 2 years in the row, the 4 Grand Slams, in fact, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
So the year that will be totally insane, So I don't know. I see a new top 3, a new Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic coming up.
Wow.
Okay, Mark. Another unfair question. Will the Joker win another one?
I was actually out for dinner with friends last night here in the desert, and of course, we were talking tennis and the fact that I'm heading down to Australia very shortly, and that was one of the areas we were discussing, and I did say to my to the friends I was with that I don't see right now Djokovic picking up another win at Grand Slam level. I think there's a distinct possibility of him winning a regular tournament that is played over the best of 3 set format. But the question I think that I place over Novak these days is he's just aging out, and unfortunately we've all gone through that period. But the 5 set format, having to play 7 matches, five sets over 2 weeks, I just think it's probably out of his reach. And I know that he's preparing for the Australian Open, and that's where he's won 10 Grand Slams, previous Australian Open. So there's obviously the conditions are suitable for Novak, and we do have a very strong support crew of Djokovic followers, of Serbs that live in Australia. So he feels very comfortable there. But I find it very difficult to believe that he's going to pick up another slam. And he may still be there in the second week of the Australian Open. I think that's almost a given. But as far as lofting that trophy at the end of 2 weeks, I just don't see it happening again.
Well, he certainly has been very dominant, and in my opinion, I think he's. I love what he's done because he's improved himself over the years, and he's a real champion without question.
Yeah, look, I'd even go to the extent of, as I said last night in the dinner that I was at that I think he's really putting his eggs into this one basket for the Australian Open, depending on the results. So, I mean, there's always that possibility that, because it's not just about what's happening up your end of the court. You actually have to look down the other end at your opponent, and there is always that possibility that someone elevates themselves against Djokovic. He has always, for many, many years, he's been the graph, how you grade yourself as a player when you play Djokovic. So he's now a target. I mean, he's always been a target, but the way the tour is, players, they're not fearful of playing Novak any longer. In fact, they want to get out there. And I think that really, it does impact his, where he just can't breeze through matches. And I don't want to say that he's done it with ease in the past, but
every match is tough.
Every match is going to be from the first round. And if the result doesn't come his way, if he is bundled out early, or if he reaches the second week and is just blitzed by either Alcaraz or Sinner, I don't see Novak playing a complete year. I would even suggest that he would already have plans in place, scenarios that if it doesn't go well in Australia, that he may. I wouldn't surprise me to hear an announcement that he's retiring.
Well, of course, you played singles and you played doubles with Todd. Of course, your number one partner.
Yep.
But you also played with John McEnroe, and I think you have a real funny story about playing singles against McEnroe. Is that would you share that with us?
Well, I've been just blessed with my career that, as I said, I grew up that, tennis was also a team sport for me. I loved being I loved playing doubles. I loved being in a team and supporting my teammates. So I've really been blessed that I've had some fantastic partners in my career. And obviously the joy of the historical aspect of playing with Todd. It's a lot of fun when you're winning. It's a lot of fun when you're good buddies, and for 10 years that we competed together, paired up together. But I think a lot behind why Todd and I got together really goes to John McEnroe, and I did have the experience of playing for probably a year and a bit with John, and I learnt a lot about tennis. I learned a lot about doubles. I learned a lot about myself being exposed to playing. And as great as what a partner Todd Woodbridge was, and he is without a doubt one of the greatest doubles or tennis players, but doubles player, for me, John McEnroe is probably the greatest doubles player that I've seen play. And I just happened to be able to be part of that for a period of time. I also got to play with Martina Navratilova in mixed doubles. So two of arguably the greatest ever. I got to play, well, I should say three, Todd Woodbridge, but John McEnroe and Martina. But the story with John McEnroe was that, yes, I had to play against him twice in singles, spread over a 2-week period, which was the Canadian Open in Toronto, and I picked up a win there. And 2 weeks later at the US Open, the way the draw was that it got played out or drawn out, we had to cross paths again in the second or third round. And fortunately, I was able to pick up a second win in singles against him on centre court at the US Open in a night session with I think it was a Friday evening, so it was a capacity crowd.
Rowdy crowd.
Yeah. So, these are the moments that really can, set your pathway. They help carve out your existence. And 2 weeks later, after the US Open had finished, the next event was in Los Angeles. The way the calendar used to play out, after the US Open, the next event in the US was Los Angeles. The week after that was San Francisco. And then the tour kind of went down to Asia and continued on. But I turned up in LA, and my doubles partner at the time was Wally Masur. And he wasn't present at the tournament. And as I said, because most weeks that I played any event, I played singles and doubles. So I didn't have a partner, and I just went up to the tour manager, who was standing near the sign-up sheet, and so players at that stage, if you were looking for a partner, you just put your name down on a sheet on the sign-up list saying partner required or partner needed.
And no agent involved in that one, right?
No, and really, that's how raw it used to be. It was just a sign-up sheet on the table in the tournament office.
That's pretty cool, actually.
You had to sign in. You didn't have like the computer to tap your name and your partner into. You actually had to go and sign who you're playing with. So I went in to scan if there was someone looking. And the tour manager saw me, and he was on the phone at the time, and I didn't know who he was talking to, and he just kind of was holding the phone out from his ear, though, because whoever was on the other end was speaking quite loudly. And he kind of said, so he just looked at me and he said, so, is this whispered to me, is there something you need? And I said, yeah, I'm looking for a partner. Do you know of anyone? So he literally brought the phone closer to his ear and repeated to the person on the other end, well, hey, that young Australian lad that's actually beaten you the last couple of weeks in singles? He's just turned up and he's looking for a doubles partner. Would he be suitable? And I looked at the tour manager going, like, who are you talking to? Like, because I wanted to know, I didn't want to sign up with just Joe Blow. I wanted to sign with someone that I felt like I had a chance to win matches or the tournament with. But he's like, once he had relayed this to the person, he held the phone back out again because whoever it was raised their voice very loudly again. They finished, and I'm like, who is it? And he goes, okay, well, yep, all right, well, I'll hear from you soon. And he hung up, and he said, I may have a partner for you. And I said, well, who the heck was it? And he said, it was John McEnroe. And once I floated your name, he actually calmed down a little, and he said that he'd let me know in 30 minutes. I absolutely, profusely started sweating. I went into a bit of a panic because I wasn't anticipating, signing up with John McEnroe. And it literally took all of the 30 minutes for me to kind of get my head around. I raced off to my coach and I said, I can't believe the tour manager's talking to McEnroe, and, that there's a chance I may be playing with him. And he just said, well, what will be, will be. And I got the call up probably about 30 minutes later or 45 minutes later saying that McEnroe had agreed to play. We needed a wild card into the tournament. I really braced myself. It's very different, as you guys well know. When someone is up the other end in singles, and they're your opponent, they're your foe, you don't have to like them. And in fact, to be quite honest, I never liked McEnroe. I was a big Borg fan. So whenever they played, I was always supporting Borg. I just didn't like, the way McEnroe, I loved his style, but I loathed his attitude, the way he just behaved on the court. So when I played him in singles, I could hate him up the other end. I didn't have to interact with him, right? But playing doubles, I was always brought up on the belief that you played doubles with a friend, someone that you knew, someone that you liked, that you got along well with. And that was really a tough one for me to get my head around. But when he walked into the locker room, I was actually coming out of the shower because I'd already played my first round singles and had won. So I literally was in the locker room toweling myself off, and he walked in. And I had not really interacted with him at all on the tour. I mean, yes, I played against him, but I never really conversed with him beforehand. So he came walking up to me. Just he saw me toweling myself off naked with it, and I kind of, again, I just come out. I was wet, but I think I started profusely sweating again because he walked in and it was like he came just eyes staring at me, and just came up and he said, "Hey." And I kind of covered myself up like, I was bare. And it was almost like he came nose to me and said, "So you think you're good enough to play doubles with me?" I just kind of like tried to further wrap the towel around, I felt so bare. But I just said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And then he kind of stepped back, and it was like he tapped me on my shoulder or in my chest and just said, "You better hold your end up on the court then." And he kind of pivoted and walked off. And I was, just like standing there going, "Oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? Like, is this, how can I like this person?" So really the first match we played was, it was more about me, because I was obviously not to his level on the doubles court. I was just a bundle of nerves, and I didn't do a lot of talking to him. I was really in a panic. I was playing not so well, and we lost the first set. And all I kept thinking, I was younger. I'd put McEnroe on a pedestal. I'm playing with the great John McEnroe, and I didn't know what to say to him. My coach had said, just learn, ask questions, but I was playing so badly, I didn't know what to say. But after losing the first set, he literally elbowed me in my ribs, and I kind of like jumped, and I looked across at him and he said, "Breathe, take a breath," which I did. And then he said, "It's okay if we lose the match. I'll still think you're a pretty good tennis player because I've seen how good you can play. Kind of, you kicked my ass a couple of times in singles." But he said, "I just feel like you're so tight and, you're not letting go. Just breathe and let it go, and we'll see see if we can, bounce back." And it was like 1,000 Christmases had come at once. It was like the chains had come off of my shoulders. I was like, he just spoke to me. He's told me to breathe. So I started to try and deep breath all the time. But it just transformed me. It provided the belief in me, but I believed in what he was telling me. And we turned the match around. We won. I apologized to him, and he said, "Yeah, look," he said, this is part of the sport, learning how to, to play with the good and the bad." I fired off at him that I was playing San Francisco the next week as well, and would he be willing to play doubles the next week? And his response was, "Let's just see how this first week goes, and I'll let you know." So it was kind of hanging in the balance. Every match we played, he just never would say anything to me. We kept winning, fortunately. And when we won the final in LA, we literally shook hands on match point. And he said, "You've won yourself a gig next week." And so we played the next week, and we won LA, we won San Francisco. We actually went to the same tournaments in Asia. I got to practice a whole lot with him, spend some time with him, and then ended up winning the US Open. So my very first tournament that I ever won was standing beside John McEnroe, and look, it was it was an experience that I look back on, and I can honestly say I learned so much. I never would have evolved into the doubles player, if I hadn't have had that period of time with John McEnroe. And when he decided that he wasn't going to play doubles any longer, or with as the frequency that I was hoping we could play together, he literally sat down in Cincinnati, of all places, Steve, where you are, and we sat down in his room, and he said, "Look, I'm just to let you know, I'm not going to play doubles." This was like a year and a bit later, but he said, "I'm not going to play doubles, as often anymore." And he said, I want you to know it's not because you're playing badly or anything." And he said, "But I want to promote that you need to keep playing." And he rattled off probably, I don't know, maybe 8 areas. You should play with a right-hander. You should play with an Australian. You should play with someone younger. You should play with someone who plays singles and doubles. So it's just these elements, bullet points. And literally by the time he came down to the end of his speech to me, in my mind, the one person that I had that had floated to the top of my list was Todd Woodbridge. And so I knew Todd. He fit every one of those criteria that McEnroe had described. And then I approached, I think a week later, a tournament in New Haven. I knew Todd was there, and he wasn't playing doubles with his partner that he'd grown up with, and so we ended up playing together, and that was really the beginning of the Woodies partnership for 10 years. So thanks to John McEnroe.
I was going to say, so John McEnroe certainly had a very, very big impact on your game.
Massive. I was evolving as a player anyway at that time. My journey was, in singles certainly was on the rise. But yeah, it's just timing of being able to be exposed to one of the all-time greats was just huge. And Todd was looking for a partner. He had a coach. I didn't have a coach at the time because I was coming off of an injury, and I was traveling with a trainer to do a lot of rehab and really try and improve my fitness levels. And it's like a jigsaw. I was looking to play with a new partner. Todd was looking for a partner. He wanted to play with someone that had some experience of winning tournaments, because his aspiration was to be an elite player. So I'd been exposed to playing with McEnroe. I'd won a US Open. I'd won tournaments. I was left-handed. I was a little older. I was from Australia. So it's just this jigsaw came together. And as we say in Australia, Bob's your uncle. 10 years of a lot of success playing with Todd Woodbridge.
Well, you certainly had a marvelous Hall of Fame career. So John McEnroe gave you a real basic tip. He said, breathe. Okay, can you offer a couple of basic tips to the club player out there? Someone that you've never even seen play, but it's a couple of little things like breathe that it could make everybody just play a little bit better. What would those points be?
Yeah, look, well, probably number one for let's say for doubles, because clearly at club level, and it's, I think it is around the world, but in particular here in the US, doubles is played so frequently. So probably my number one tip is pick a good partner.
Okay.
I, I can attribute to that
Uh,
with the three people I've paired up with and had a lot of success with. So yeah, pick a partner that will blend with your game and communicate. I mean, as you both know, when we've done a variety of appearances and camps. I mean, my what I put out to those who are attending those camps is when you're playing doubles, um, communicate with your partner. Find out whether they like to serve and volley, whether they like to serve and stay back, whether they like to play on the juice court or the ad court. Because in those moments in a match, you don't want to be surprised by what your partner can and can't do. So I think it's like picking a partner, communicating with your partner, and then sometimes, as you alluded to, Steve, keep it simple. Sometimes less is better. So, for me, it is, at that time playing with McEnroe, and I had to experience that also with Martina Navratilova. The first match I played with her, I was so tense, playing with greatness beside me. But it was just, like breathing, trying to relax. I mean, it's really hard to actually hit a serve, isn't it, Guy, when your shoulders are up around your ears and trying to serve or hit a return or hit a volley. You want to be relaxed so that we can, make contact with the ball. But I just a lot of there are other key areas, but I think just quite simply picking a good partner, communicating with that partner, and just learning what your game, how you can combine, blend together, and enjoy it.
Okay, I've obviously had the privilege of working with you for a lot of years now, and you do such a great job on the court. And the one thing that is constant on your court is the loud twack of that volley. Okay, we call them the Woody. We refer to them as the Woody volleys. Okay, so what makes your volley so explosive?
Well, I think as from the early stages of learning how to play tennis. So my dad was he used to play, and he was a pretty good tennis player locally in Adelaide. He never had the opportunities actually to travel interstate that much, let alone overseas. His parents never had the finances to send him away, but he was a pretty good tennis player. He was a coach, and the tennis club that we all grew at, he basically ran the club and gave a lot of lessons. So, when I used to go out on the weekends and have lessons with my dad, part of it was learning how to volley. I don't want anyone to be taking this the wrong way, but there were so many times as a youngster up at net. I mean, I think the problem with volleys is that some of us, when we're learning to volley, we get uncomfortable up there because the ball is coming at you. You don't have much time to react to it. And so my dad would put me at the net, and he would be on the baseline with a basket of balls beside him, and he would literally fire balls at me, but not with space where I had to step out and to the ball. It was directly into my body. It was he was yelling from one end to me saying, "Move out of the way and move towards the ball," but it just created this activity. It was a matter of survival for me as a young kid. I didn't want to get hit by the ball that was being flung with this velocity at me. So it really was defense, but self-defense, that I learned how to get out of the way and get my racket up. It wasn't about moving out of the way, literally. It was getting the racket up to protect my body from being struck. And so quick reflexes was something that I just that came at a very early age. When I went over to Europe in my formative years to learn to play on clay, my coach was guiding me. Don't just stay on the baseline. You've got to learn to play on the baseline, but you still can transition to the net to use one of your strengths is your volley, your touch. And playing on clay was just very, very alien to me. So we had the opportunity to go to certain tournaments, and we actually travelled to your neck of the woods, Guy. We went up to Stade to watch the ATP event that was played. It's still there to these days, but we got to, my coach, Barry Phillips-Moore, he was very good friends with Roy Emerson. And Roy Emerson that's where he, domiciled for a good part of the year. He had these camps, but in those days, he actually still was given a wild card into the main draw of the tournament. So we would go watch. And of course, Emo, his goal was to try and, he wasn't going to mess around on the baseline and try and last these much younger guys. Right. He tried to hustle to net, and he had to play these volleys from his shoelaces and behind the service line. And once he played one volley from the service line, he then moved forward. And so it just kind of was implanted in my memory that, okay, that's Roy Emerson is one of the all-time greats. That's how you need to volley, getting to the net on clay. And I got to play with his son, Anthony, who was just an absolute mimic of the way that Roy played. And so, look, when someone's standing beside you up at net, and for me, I always wanted to watch players so I could learn, how to do things or sometimes not do things. But watching Roy Emerson and having the chance to play with Anthony Emerson, I kind of learned how to volley, and it went from there. I never lost sight throughout my career that, in order for me to, if I was going to compete with the best, I had to use my weapons, and that was actually getting to net and volleying. So playing doubles, you're going to have a lot of singles and doubles, but in doubles, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to play volleys and reflex volleys. So whenever we went off to train, and in particular Davis Cup, from Neil Fraser, we all practiced reflex volleys to when John Newcombe and Tony Roach were the captains. We did a lot of volleying drills, reflex drills, and it's something that I've carried forward now, that when I come to camps or I'm working with players, it is about firing the ball at them and having fun. Hopefully, Steve and Guy, I mean, people come off my court. I hope they enjoy being on my court because I try to make it fun.
Nobody has more fun out there teaching than you do. We always have you on the show court down at Nukes, and everybody talks about the Woody fields, because if you are up at that net and Woody is feeding you the ball, you damn well better have your racket ready, because that ball is coming at a pretty darn good pace.
And if you get
Woody
tagged,
feeds are infinite.
if you get tagged, it only stings for a couple of seconds, right?
Just a while, yeah, just a while. It's a badge of honor as well to be tagged by Woody. So now, you have given us the privilege of traveling with us. Of course, not only at Nukes at Tennis Fantasies, but on a number of our Bonjour tennis trips.
Yes.
And obviously your input and your being there, it just you immerse yourself in these trips, and you certainly make them. Your presence adds to the event. Tell us from your perspective relative to the work you've done with us on these tours. On these Bonjour tennis trips,
you're. I wish that I could be doing a whole lot more of them, and I mean, you guys do a brilliant job in putting them together, and I think was it the inaugural camp that the first one was where we played at Roland Garros and then travelled to Lyon, and that happened at the back end of Wimbledon. So for me to go back to Roland Garros, and that's I think the experience that hopefully people that are listening to our conversation here, the experiences that you provide. There are a lot of tennis camps, and let's just say, the tennis camps, fantasy camp that we do at Nukes, and you go there and it is an experience. And we're there in Texas, but the Bonjour tennis fantasies, to be able to go away internationally and experience the facilities like Roland Garros. I mean, the players got to compete, to play morning sessions on the practice courts that the players at Jean-Bouin, they had that opportunity to see those facilities. And then, of course, you mix in the chance to play on some of the show courts that they use for Roland Garros. Traveling to Lyon and playing at, I think it was the second oldest club in all of France. So there's a mix of what present day tennis and that traditional aspect. I just, to see the joy, and I think that's, for me, even as a tennis player, I've had a lot of joy on the court myself. But when you're coaching, and to see the joy of whether it's a professional tennis player or someone that is, just a social player trying to have a good time, and maybe they're looking to improve, a couple of levels, to be able to come away and be part of that experience for them to play at some of these fantastic facilities. You guys have gone to Foro Italico. You've been to Madrid. We're still working on, I know a couple have been to Australia as well, that I was there.
Couillon was a treat.
Look, to be able to arrive in some of these cities, but playing at some of the major facilities that have been a part of tennis or currently are. So I get a lot of joy. I'm just overjoyed that you guys invite me, and I would love to. My goal is to be available for a number of these moving forward, and it's a wonderful opportunity. I think for the guests that they come away, feeling that this is just so worthwhile, and when's the next trip happening? Let me sign up.
Yeah, put me in, coach. Yeah. Well, Mark, we thank you not only for your time today, but for all of the wonderful hours and hours and hours you put on the court with our guests wherever we go. And Mark, well, I have that we did make some adjustments after that first train trip to Lyon. Okay. We figured that one out real quickly.
I've never.
That won't be an issue anymore.
It's like a circle of life, isn't it? I mean, when I first was traveling in Europe, and lack of funds, and you're trying to be as economical as possible. So I used to travel on the train quite a bit, but you're carrying your rackets and your bags, and it just, at the time, you think, oh my gosh, I've got to get so good at this game that I can get from A to B on a plane without having to catch the train. But that was certainly one of the most, looking back, it was one of the most funniest moments to see. I think the three of us, we were literally baggage conductors.
Yeah, we were the baggage handlers. Yep, and then Guy topped that one off by making the bus driver go down the wrong way so we could get out of that parking lot. We've had wonderful times. We will look forward to a lot more good times with you, Mark. Have a great trip down under. I know it's homecoming hours for you, and I know you look forward to it. And we'll catch up soon, I guess, in March for sure. We'll see you in Texas, and hopefully you'll be with us on one of our summer trips as well.
Well, look, it's a pleasure. It always is, and I think again for people listening in, I'm just a small part of it, and there, I'm
You're a
sure
big
that there'll
part of it.
be some others that will participate. But to you, Steve, and to you, Guy, it's your generosity of also providing time, patience, and putting these the international aspect of the fantasy camps together. So it's a pleasure working with you guys, and I look forward to being on some of those trips in 2026.
We'll do it. Thank you.